This is a weekly update for Mr. Fix's science class for the week of September 30th. Alright, so on Monday, we practiced for the test that was on Tuesday. So the test covers reference notebook pages 8 through 13. I gave them some quizzes, practice to do, and some heat transfer review. We did some group study right before the assessment, and then we took the test. Then on Wednesday, I gave them some time to work on their letter or postcard post-penguin shelter assessment. Again, they had to make sure they used the information on page 13 of the reference notebook, and when they do that, so that's the last time in class I gave them to work on that. Then we did the Handboiler activity, day 1 and day 2, so let's take a look at that. Alright, so here's the Handboiler. So they were warned on how they needed to be very mindful and deliberate in their actions to reduce the risk of accidents and breakage of the handboiler because it's very delicate. So then they observed phenomena. They wrote down and recorded observations of the phenomena. Basically, they took the handboiler and they noticed what happened to the handboiler as a result of doing certain things to it. They wrote at least 3 observations down in their notebook. They're doing science notebook. And then they had to write down at least 3 questions that the phenomena inspired and wrote them down in their doing science notebook. Then they wrote down on page 15 in the reference notebook particle model information. So they wrote all this down. And then they did some structured think, pair, share. So they wrote down what they individually thought the answer to the question of what makes the handboiler work. Then they asked their partner and listened to the partner what they thought. Then we did some reading. So we had 2 paragraphs, and they read the 2 paragraphs, and then they wrote down the main idea of each paragraph into the summary protocol notes in their handout. So this is the handout they had. So they wrote down the main ideas of each paragraph. And then what they did is they made a scientific argument that answers the question of how does the handboiler work. So the proposed answer is the handboiler works because of temperature and pressure, which they got that information from the 2 paragraphs. Evidence is what they observed and the phenomena observations that they had in their doing science notebook. And then the reasoning came from the 2 readings, the 2 paragraph readings, and from page 15 information in the reference notebook. So the reasoning basically is the science concepts that explains what they observed on the phenomena answers the question. So they did that. Alright, so these slides explain that. So this is their first scientific argument, so that's why we actually did it as class together, and they kind of copied down what I wrote down. So, because they're going to make many scientific arguments this year, so I want them to have a really good idea of what they were doing. Now they did an extension where the recorded the time it took for the liquid to rise to the first gets to the top of just using their hand. They made a prediction of what material will slow down the rising of the liquid the most to the least. So they did these 5 ones, and they constructed a data table to collect the data, and then they compared the results to the prediction, and then they identified the best insulator based on the collected data. So that's basically what we did this week. Hope you have a good weekend. Bye-bye.